Hi, I'm Brinda Agarwal, and thank you for joining us on this edition of ICANN Facebook Live. Should we be hopeful about the health of the environment post COVID 19? Let me begin by talking a little bit about what is ICANN. ICANN, India COVID Action Network, is an initiative to help underprivileged communities that have been hardest hit due to COVID 19. It is an online platform that connects those who are in need of help and those who can provide it. Our COVID warriors work from home, activating their on ground community networks and mobilizing resources to reach vulnerable sections of society in these difficult times. COVID warriors are spread across India and steadily growing day by day. Now, coming back to our topic of discussion today, well, I would request you to humor a bit of the philosophical side of mine for a couple of minutes. We have often participated in competitions at school on making posters about saving the environment, and or heard leaders talking about it that we have to save our mother earth, save environment. Well, can we really save environment? Aren't we claiming that we are superior enough, that we have the power to save it? Well, I believe that we should work on saving ourselves because the earth will live on. It is immortal. It is we, mortal beings, who have to take care of ourselves. Today, we have with us the director of Indian South Asia Earth Day Network, Ajay Mittal. He's a member of the Global Shapers Community, an initiative of World Economic Forum, and a climate reality leader, an initiative of the former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. Welcome, Ajay. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Rinda. Thank you, Rinda, and many congratulations on the wonderful initiative you have been doing. So I'm sure this is going to help a lot of people learn more about subjects, because this is a time we are all in lockdown and it's a great opportunity to learn about different topics. So I think these kind of initiatives are really, really helpful for a lot of people. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for appreciating our initiative. We've already impacted some more than 3 lakh lives. But now
Wow.
let me begin by quoting some statements that are circling around environment on Twitter or on other social media handles. Nature has hit the reset button. Animals are taking over. Now, with this pandemic, do you think we see a hope that nature will rejuvenate and we can all live in harmony without hurting each other, nature and the humans?
See, I am a optimist, and one of the best things that, as you mentioned, about nature is healing itself. So this is one thing which we have seen is the power of nature to repair itself. There are some laws of nature which says that nature knows its best, and that's what we have seen. Like in just a very short period of time, we have seen some kind of statistics which we would have never expected. Like, say, for air quality, we have seen air quality is going down in cities by as much as 64%. In my city, in Kolkata, where I have been recording air quality cities and monitoring it very extensively, around December, the air quality levels were like severe, for 400 levels, like that. And during the lockdown period, I have seen levels going down to 30. Which is something I have never imagined I would see in my this thing. Like, and all the monitors, it's not just like because air quality data is very volatile and it keeps changing everything. But I've seen consistently it has been this thing. See, for kids, I know there was an experiment done where the kids would ask what is the color of the sky, and they would say gray, because they have never seen a clear blue sky. And now this is the first time probably they are seeing clear blue skies. A lot of them are seeing for the first time. We have heard so many stories. Like in my city only, I'll just give a very good example. We have the Ganges flowing in, the Hooghly River is there. In my lifetime, I've never heard that there were Ganges dolphins being visible. And it's about like economic, a lot of people are saying that after 30 years, for the first time, they are seeing river dolphins there. So these are great examples of and symbols like how when we kind of create some space for nature and we do not claim all the space, then we get some space for nature, how nature reclaims itself. And that's a very important message, that we'll have to live in a codependency world. It is not that humans completely own this world. We have to depend on everything, on living creatures for our survival. So it's a very strong message for nature. And you briefly touched upon it, like about this pandemic and climate kind of change, the risk and everything. So if you see, scientists have been telling us about the climate risk for years now. And these are the same scientists about science telling us about a particular virus. if the threat appears so direct, so personal, what we have done, we have gone through such bold actions like locking down cities, factories, the economy is particularly shutting down. That is something which we have never imagined. The climate crisis asks for the same thing, but in a more phased manner. It never said that you lock down everything. It says we need to transition, and the solution exists. But we never saw such bold political actions. So this gives me hope that right now what has happened, it just shows that if we give more time to nature and if we move towards a more solution oriented approach, we can actually change the course of climate change. So this is very positive for me.
So we can say here that in order to have a healthy environment, we don't need to get into this induced coma that we have now. It can be done in a much better way where less lives are harmed and people have still their economic activity going on, a better livelihood, and it can be much phased. And if I add a rider to it, it is कि हमें जो अभी चाहिए, that's a political will. अगर आपके पास एक political will है, you can even get rid of polio in the country like India. You can have a metro which is working in Delhi. You can do a lot of infrastructure development. But if you have a political will, you can actually reduce your emissions that all the climate summits keep talking about.
Absolutely. Like talking about some of the aspects, like, see, oil prices have gone down. We have seen what is happening with the oil prices, and there is a lot of stock of oil and low prices. Now, this is actually a direct threat to our clean energy goals, because if the oil prices are going down, fossil fuel prices are going down, it's actually can push the clean energy goals further. But I think there is also an opportunity for policymakers now to look at this as an opportunity rather than pushing away the clean energy goals. Because what they can do is that they can remove the subsidies on fossil fuels, like the petrol subsidies which are there, the coal subsidies which are there, and that's they can actually tax that and fill up the gap in revenues, because there is a huge shortage of revenues for the governments, and there are huge challenges ahead for them. So this is an opportunity where they need to take such balancing acts in place. Start taxing what has been a lot of discussion has been going about carbon tax. This is the time where these kind of concepts can actually help the economy. A very, very good example of creating jobs for people which is required and creating a whole new green economy. I heard a very good example from Pakistan, where they had I think last year they launched a project where they wanted to do about 1 billion or 10 billion trees as a tree tsunami is a project this thing. What they have done is that they are giving opportunities for laborers to now plant trees and pay them money for that. Even I think this is being considered right now in US also. There was some discussions going on with planting trees can alone create about 150,000 jobs for people. I think that's a great opportunity. Why not expand our forests? Why not do kind of tree plantation again? And these are all kind of activities where people in the villages, in the rural India, they can actually create jobs. So these are great examples where government can look at creating new economy, a new green economy, create more jobs for people. Also creating an infrastructure. Like we know at the moment, lot less people are going out. So this is a great time for people, for the governments to create infrastructure which can prepare us better to deal with crisis. Like say for areas which are flood prone, we know how risk is rising. So creating some kind of infrastructure which can actually safeguard the lives of people. This is an opportunity for that. Creating better design for cities where we have better public transport or better pedestrian facilities, better cycle lanes. These are opportunities that you utilize, because then again, creating infrastructure for electric cars. We know that electric cars and charging points is like a problem, like demand kind of problem where which comes in first. Like if we have a lot of electric cars, we need a lot of electric charging stations. Now, again, when we have this opportunity to create this infrastructure, so that's, I think, is what is going to be a solution for governments to look at. And as we always say as environmentalists, is that to solve this climate change problem, we have to look at both levels. It has to be bottom up and has to be top down. We need lifestyle changes as well. And that some of the solutions to safeguard yourself from this virus and to solve the climate crisis have a lot of symmetry, especially in lifestyle changes. So that's where we can focus on. Some examples of lifestyle changes includes cutting down on travel, which we are going to see for sure. Like, so a lot of meetings, a lot of conferences are now going virtual, and we just realized that it was not required. We can actually manage those so easily. A lot of meetings which we do traveling across cities for our offices, all of them are being managed in virtual calls right now, which is such a great opportunity. Like, we doing this interview right now also, everything is happening through technology. It costs less, and it doesn't kind of affect anything. So these are great opportunities. Number of people going to offices and working from home. Now, again, this is a great opportunity. People working from home cuts down the pressure on public transport. So this is a great opportunity as well. So, and there are numerous such examples that come to my mind in terms of lifestyle changes.
So I'll pick up a few points from the answer that you've given, because a lot of questions that buzzing for me. First, you said that we should tax petrol or diesel or gas, but that is going to impact the consumer. And like cars is one of the most important modes of transportation for a lot of, I would say, even for the trucks that we have, which transport a lot of fruits, vegetables, and essential commodities in the economy, even for the consumer who is like going to an office. And I'm here not talking about the lower middle class, but maybe middle class and upper who can afford a car, or maybe even scooters for that matter. So do you think that this tax right now doesn't make sense till the time we actually have an alternative that is present with us?
So when I talked about the tax things, I was thinking in the terms of that, because the cost has gone down. So there is a window for that thing to come in. Like, if the costs have gone down, you have a greater margin now. So if you remove some subsidies, you can actually increase your margins as governments in terms of your revenue. So that's an opportunity for government. So what you are doing is actually not really, of course, you have to control the inflation that might come in. You don't want consumer prices to go high. That's a reality, right? But then again, there's an opportunity because the cost has gone down actually.
Now, if you look at the electric cars, there's another debate that keeps going on, that electric cars run with electricity, and we cannot control whether that electricity is made through fossil fuels or not, because then again it's going to harm the environment. So I guess another point to it is that you may have electric cars, but how you producing that electricity is also very important.
Very true, very true. Like, this is an very good like kind of this thing. Like, what we are doing, if we look at just running a city on electric cars, and if the power is still coming from thermal power plants, and we are still burning coal, we are just exporting out the pollution. It's nothing more than that. So definitely it's very valid. But I think India right now, in terms of the price advantage, we have seen actually renewables have become a really good proposition. So, and India is doing extremely well in terms of clean energy, in terms of its ambition with clean energy. We have seen what has happened with the global alliance, the solar alliance, that India has taken leadership of that. And we have already been overachieving our targets on the way to, in terms of clean energy. So it's a great opportunity. We're in a tropical country. We have great opportunity here. So that's where you look at that opportunity and further expand this thing. So I don't see that really as a problem in terms of this thing, because we still have a very big opportunity to achieve those goals in this thing. And the direct benefit is very high, because when you clean the transport, this thing, the consequences of air pollution in India specifically is very high. And if we look at from the COVID perspective also, where the health determinants of environment, if they are controlled, we can actually have better quality of life people, and the people at risk could be less, because we have seen now researchers coming in where they have seen that cities which are affected by air pollution, the population which has been kind of exposed to high levels of pollution over a period of time, the fatality rates are higher. This is research which is saying as this thing. And it makes very common sense, because if it's a respiratory virus and people have been prolonged exposure to respiratory disorders, their lungs are weaker. So it completely makes sense. So we can actually equip people with better health. I remember reading a WHO report earlier which says that the global health burden of environment-related diseases is about one-fourth of the total disease burden. So it's a great opportunity because now health is one aspect which everyone is looking at. Public health is a very big concern right now. And this COVID crisis is actually going to prepare us for a long-term public health. I really hope that government starts spending more on public health and the infrastructure for public health improves there, which is going to be a very long-term good investment for all of us.
So I'll just summarize what all we have talked till now. First thing is that environment can rejuvenate itself, so there is hope. In order to rejuvenate, we don't need to be in this induced coma. It can happen in a very phased manner, which scientists have talked about, and we can work over more details with Ajay in a while. Have some lifestyle changes at our own individual level. Maybe less travel, maybe avoid unnecessary travel, and a very strong government policy initiative is very essential to achieve, and it can achieve because there can be a lot of jobs that can be created in the clean energy and renewable energy environment. So
Right.
this is where we are right now. Now let me step back a little bit, and I want to ask that all the earlier encroachments that we were happening till now, do you think that has led to coronavirus?
I'm sorry.
The earlier encroachments of environment that we have been doing all this while, do you think that has led to a virus like this, a pandemic like
See, I don't like kind of think we there's no evidence as such right now which is kind of proved that there is a people have been able to zero down on the exact cause of this pandemic, but there are reports which say that coronavirus family of this virus is zoonotic, which means that the origin is from animals. And if you look at what has been going on in the media and everything, is that it probably has come from a lot of problems. A lot of viruses actually emerged from people eating a lot of meat, because a lot of this a lot of different species and animals through which these viruses are come into the human system basically. So, and a lot of times that environmentalists has been saying us is that one way to solve the climate crisis is to move towards a more vegan diet. This is something which comes in all the time because the dairy industry and also generally about the animal rights activists have been saying these things. And there is a general law of nature, like you need to live with that. And all of these things, some of them is scientific, some of them is like of morality. So everything combined, if you look at this thing, I definitely think that maybe we have not been able to establish a direct link between this virus and climate crisis, but there is enough evidence that climate crisis can lead to a lot more pandemics, which science has been telling us already. Like one example, that science has always been telling us that as the ice glaciers melt, a lot of infections and a lot of viruses which might be there might come into the surface, and that might cause future pandemics. So apart from that, one thing which is very evident with all such crises is you look at people who are vulnerable. We have seen now what is happening in countries like India, where a lot of sufferings is not directly related to the COVID virus infection, but due to the lockdown, which has caused a lot of problem. The migrant crisis that we are seeing, people not being able to access healthcare, people not being access to food, sanitation facilities, and everything. These people are extremely vulnerable to a lot of climate related events like flood, cyclones, earthquake, whatever those are, forest fires, everything. Now, so equipping these people, vulnerable people, with facilities and infrastructure should be one of the priorities, and that is one solution which governments, according to me, must prioritize. We cannot let these vulnerable people to just be dependent on private philanthropy alone. The governments need to come in and big time and support and create a system to support these people.
So another thing that we are seeing in the present times is I was reading this report that actually the encroachments on wildlife, the poaching of wildlife and of cutting down of trees is actually increased during this time because surveillance is not happening at the quality that it should with the pandemic because all the focus has been shifted to fighting the pandemic. So I think this is a story which is like kind of hidden under all the pandemic news. So what do you think about that with the increased poaching and felling of trees that we are seeing?
Okay, so I haven't heard about this, but this makes sense to me. A lot of right now reports are coming in where we are seeing that a lot of environmental laws are being diluted right now because governments are looking at increasing kind of economic outputs, and they're trying to help the industries with laws in terms of labor laws also being relaxed so that the economic output can increase, and they are basically trying to switch on the economics. I think that's exactly where the problem lies, probably, to me, because if we still don't understand that we need to create a balance for people and nature, then I think we are completely misguided right now, because we might be able to create a solution for a short term with these kind of solutions, but in the long term we are going to end up in a bigger crisis with this. So I think this is, if this is happening, this needs greater kind of monitoring by the government, and governments must not be misguided by this thing. They should not take such measures which actually is not just an environmental risk, but it's also a risk to human rights of people. Like, you cannot just dilute the labor laws and kind of dilute the environmental laws because for such reasons, because I think that makes no sense. And we have also seen how governments are trying to kind of introduce certain policies and everything. These times are not kind of thing, because see, it becomes difficult for activists also to kind of protest at this moment, because the general idea of how we protest, it cannot happen right now. We cannot go out and do kind of protest or demonstrations right now. So it's a lot of governments have to play a lot of responsible role in these things, and also people on the whole have to also understand right now that we cannot further exploit the environment. I think we need to kind of be moral about these things, that this is not an economic opportunity. This thing, if we have to create a greater economic opportunity, there lies one, but not at the cost of nature.
So we can say that the government is going to be tempted and is tempted because steps are being taken to open the economy and relaxing the environmental laws and regulations, but actually doesn't need to do that. It may lead to short-term benefits, but in long term it's actually going to harm globally all of us, since it can lead to more future pandemics and with the environment changing around us. So Ajay, what do you read right now? Do you think that so I have a very interesting statistic that when the 2008 crisis happened, almost there was a decrease of 1.4% in fossil fuel combustion and cement production at a global level. But in 2010, when people had normalized and actually forgotten the crisis and the economy had come back to normal, those same reductions actually rose by 5.9%, much more than what was pre-2008. So do you think something like this can happen post-COVID also, where right now we are seeing positivity, but with the economy going in full gusto and people forgetting that something like this happened with their short-term memory, we're actually going to see more emissions in the future if we don't keep a check?
Yes, so this is something which I've been reading about, and there's something which we have seen in past as well. Whenever there is a dip right now, we have seen, like, for the first time in 4 decades, the CO2 levels are going down, which is not happened in last 4 decades, right? So we have seen this happening, but as you rightly pointed out, from the past experience, what we have seen is that there is a certain surge, and we see things going back to normal. I also think that, of course, there will be economic activities as they start opening up, and there will be a little aggressive approach by the industry and by the government also, because right now, see, what has happened is that a lot of factories are closed and everything is closed. So what we are consuming right now probably is what was stocked in. Now as the stocks kind of start, we can start emptying the stock, there will be a fresh demand, because consumption, a lot of consumption has gone down, but this consumption is going to again pick up in reality, right? That's going to happen. So when that starts to happen, we might see factories running for longer hours, and as we talked recently about labor laws being diluted and those things. So all of this is creating a particularly very, very feasible environment for all of these things to happen, where we see a more aggressive economic activity. And if that is happening, there is no means that we see a dip. We're going to see a further rise in the levels of emissions happening. But what could happen, because this is again what we have been discussing, is that we have to look at the long-term approach as well. And although there will be industrial activity growing and everything, but there is going to be a balance as well. If we see in terms of number of people, still, if government comes in with policies to support that, because I think humans are such that we need some policies along with guidelines to actually create that balance. Like, for example, number of people working from home, if that becomes a reality, or post-COVID also, sorry. So then we will see less emissions in terms of vehicular emissions will go down. We can expect that to happen. So also there will be certain industries which I think the activities are going to be down in terms of the construction activities, because we have seen a lot of laborers have moved around. For the factories also, they will see a lot of problems in terms of labor. So there are challenges which we see this thing. So I really don't have a clear estimation that if there will be a rise this thing, because there are certain factors which actually help that, because government is actually trying that to kind of have a higher economic activity. But will that happen? We really don't know. What government should be looking at is a long-term approach, and not kind of just a short-term approach to just kind of revive everything, because that's not going to help. We know that for a fact, and that might also risk the COVID infections as well. So that really doesn't make sense. We should go for a phased approach, look for a very balanced approach, slowly opening up things that is going to be better for the environment and for controlling the pandemic as well.
So from an environment point of view, what questions do you think the government should ask whenever it is trying to create an economic policy or some social economy, some social policy related to the migrants or workers, anything, that what is it that environment questions that should always be at the back of their mind when they are creating policies, which I think right now in our policy narrative is kind of missing?
I think very important that you don't look at environment as something which is an abstract. Environment is a very, very integral part of our life. Environment is a health problem. Environment is an economic problem. Environment is a livelihood problem. Environment is a direct threat to human life. Like we know how. If you relate, you cannot actually exclude environment in any consideration that you do, because it's an integral part of everything. Like, for example, we are talking about how extreme events can actually kill more people or destroy such infrastructure. It can cause huge economic losses. We have seen how heat waves, how floodings and everything can cause such a huge healthcare crisis. So there is where the government needs to look at, like, what is the priority right now for the world? It's public health. Right. So if public health becomes a priority for governments in such a crisis, they also need to look at the preventive side of things. By addressing environmental crisis, we can prevent so many crises, in both for public health, for weather events, and so many things. So it completely makes sense that you invest in environment, because it's a very, very good long-term investment that you do for your people. So it is not it's a no-brainer. You can benefit from short term, in terms of short term, by exploiting things, but in the long term, everything that works is for the people, and you have to look at equality. You cannot just look at just one section of the society. That's a very big mistake which we have seen time and again, and I think that's something which governments need to fix right now.
So another thing that is worrying a lot of environmental lobbies and environmentalists is that the annual climate change summit may not happen this year, or if it may happen, it will be through video conferencing, where a lot of lobbying goes and policy initiatives are pushed. If that is not happening, how do you think the environmentalists are going to deal with it, are going to push their agendas to make sure that governments don't take any reckless decisions for their short-term gains and actually understand that we cannot let just nature be?
I particularly think that yes, it is a very big challenge right now for when you are kind of affected with any crisis. The kind of environment becomes a least priority for governments, is what we have noticed. Like even if you see at the environmental portfolio in a lot of states, I've seen this thing, or a lot of governments, it's kind of an additional department for some governments. They do not look at as a priority. Leaders might talk it about as a lot of talks about environment, but when it comes to doing, it doesn't reflect. It is always that economic activities, infrastructure, all of these get priority, and environment suffers. We have seen that, and it becomes, as you said, this summits are this thing, the environmentalist protests and everything becomes a challenge. So pushing the environmental agenda is challenge for this thing. But at the same time, I think it is now for governments to, and policymakers and all the experts also would. I'm sure the governments are not. I don't see the governments are unwise, because I never think that way. I think governments are really wise. There are a lot of wise people in being advising them, and that is happening. So if we see clearly what environmentalists have been talking about and scientists have been talking about, if we see that clearly now, and we see that opportunity to create a new economy, because maybe it becomes difficult to disruption alone is very difficult, and governments do not really want to bring disruptions. But this pandemic has caused the disruption. Now we know a lot of systems have broken right now. Now, do we just create the systems as it was before, or we look at a more efficient system? It definitely makes sense to create a more efficient system. That's where I think now experts will advise the governments, will come up with better suggestions for them, and I think the governments will look at some aspect of it. Although as we talk right now, we are seeing the opposite happening. But I'm just an hopeful person that things will improve from here. And also in large, as role of environmentalists, I think our role is to create more awareness and create more consciousness among people, because it's a collective responsibility. It's not just the governments alone. We have to take collective responsibility, and everyone's action together can only prevent us from such crisis, with maybe be it COVID or be it any other crisis that comes in future. It's not just for a very, very good example that comes to my mind is that me alone wearing mask will not solve the problem. It's when everyone wearing the mask, then only we can control the infection. In fact, I am wearing mask, then it makes others around me safe. And when others around me are wearing my mask, that is only when I am completely safe. And it's a very, very good example. Like if we all act responsibly, then is only we can save each other in terms of environment as
well. Another interesting thing that it is beyond my skill set, but I was looking that are the number of lives that are saved due to less pollution that we see in the environment today is more than the number of losses that we are having due to the pandemic, or are we losing a lot of people to hunger in developing countries? I don't know if you have seen any statistic around it. This is for my personal curiosity.
No, no, I think this is something which I have been thinking about as well. In the beginning, only when we saw some deaths being reported about migrant workers dying because of hunger or not getting access to healthcare, some walking hundreds of kilometers and in this heat and kind of collapsing. Uh, See, for COVID deaths, there is a tracker which tracks everything, and you know X number of people dying. If there was one tracker which was tracking air pollution deaths, or that's due to floods, that's due to extreme weather events, these kind of things, we will be horrifying. We will be horrified in terms of looking at those figures, because in India alone in 2016 or 17, there were 1.2 million deaths attributed to air pollution. And uh, although none of the death certificates read that person died because of air pollution, but we know those deaths are linked to air pollution, and that's the cause for air pollution. Like for example, so that's the whole point. We can look at COVID deaths in a live tracker and we can track and these things, but the number of people dying because of consequences of maybe COVID or for environmental reasons, we are not looking at that with that angle. So maybe it's like environmentalists should come down and create such trackers where we start tracking deaths not based on what triggered it biologically, but the cause of it. Like we
Maybe
know
asthma, increased asthma, or like some indicators that
exactly,
these diseases are related to pollution, high pollution levels, and can we somehow create a mechanism to calculate.
exactly.
It should be an
Yes. So
study.
yes, I know, and there is enough study and there is enough data about air pollution being one of the largest killers in the world. Like, and especially the South Asian region. And we are right now just talking about ambient air pollution in terms of when we are talking about air pollution, but indoor air pollution is even more dangerous. Especially in the vulnerable communities where we still have not been able to provide them with clean
Clean.
energy, healthy energy. So that's still causing a lot of deaths in as we talk about such solutions. So if we are if we can kind of shut down the entire world for a virus that kills people and probably kills less people, of course. Still, I'm not trying to demean the extent of this crisis. Like, it's definitely one of those very severe crises the world is facing. But in terms of deaths, as you rightly pointed out, uh, if we just look at deaths, air pollution is a much more serious crisis. Probably it kills over a period of time. Coronavirus kills people much faster. There is a sense of urgency, but there's no sense of urgency for air pollution.
What do you think should be the three lessons that one should take away from this crisis? Maybe both at the individual level, we did touch upon lifestyle and what should we do there as a citizen, as a global citizen, maybe, and secondly for the government, like what are some key lessons, one or two, if you could mention, that one should be careful about, one should take from this crisis?
I think the three lessons for me, which kind of helps us with both the aspect, is living, uh, looking at more need-based consumptions, which is very very practical thing to do. Looking at more local consumption, which is good right now, which is much required by a lot of things which are locally produced. So that is another thing. And third thing is what I think is a very balanced role that we have to play in terms of uh, social distancing norms, or the first thing point only, the how need based. Like, is it absolutely required for me to buy this thing, or if it is actually required for me to travel, if it is absolutely required for me to actually go to an office space to work. So these are simples, all of them are related, and we have to look at all these aspects together to kind of address the problem. And as we probably move away more, because a lot of things that governments and scientists are now saying is that the virus is going to stay. We have to kind of live with the virus. That's a fact. Like, and if you look at in India also, how economy they're now trying to open up the economy. So it clearly states is that the containment effort that the government had with the lockdown has not worked. We have not been able to contain them. So we have accepted that we have to kind of start a new world order where we maintain certain precautions, and we need to go out and do the necessary stuff. The essential services like the healthcare systems and all those supply chains have to now start working. So in such states, we still need to not forget that we need to restrict ourselves to things which are actually required, which are needed, and we do not just kind of create another surge in overconsumption, things which are not required. I definitely see a lot of these sectors getting affected. This thing which will require a transition, and government should actually think about how to help these people. Is like, say for example, fashion. Like if people are not going out, or there are no less public events or less social events, we're going to see a dip in fashion industry and this thing. And we know fashion is one of the largest polluting industries, right? So
after oil, it is said.
Exactly. So this and same thing is with transport. Like if people are traveling less, there's less intracity or intercity travel also, we'll see emissions going down. And so these are very, very interrelated events, I see. So people being responsible on these fronts is actually going to risk their exposure to the virus, and also going to, if they create this in their lifestyle and maintain this, is going to be very, very healthy for the environment as well.
With the current right-wing political cycles that we see in the world at the right now, we see that there has been obviously a dent in the advocacy of globalization, with the kind of policies that governments are following. More nationalism is being put to the forefront. Do you think that with the present crisis, globalization, the concept of globalization is going to take a hit, where countries are now going to start looking even more inwards and relying on like global supply chains?
This is something which I kind of had a thought about just when, the Prime Minister of India announced about Atmanirbhar Bharat, which kind of talks about self-dependency, creating more dependence, this thing. I don't really understand the context of it maybe, but for me, I think this is a greater time for more interdependency, because this is actually a time because there is never a concept of self-dependency which I understand, because for everything that I need, we depend on each other. Because say, for example, for our very existence, we depend on nature for the air, the water, the food and everything. And for everything that we consume, we depend on someone else. There is a need for that. We depend on each other. And in such times of crisis, I think people need to come more closer to each other and need to support each other. And that's the only way we can manage such situations. People being more self-centered, or being there should not be that kind of an arrogance or a need that comes in with self-dependency, because we have seen that people, irrespective of their status and in terms of their resources available, you might not be able, you still will need support of people. What I essentially mean is that even for a very small example, I will tell you is that if someone is having some kind of an health emergency within their families and all, doesn't matter how many resources you have, if people start stigmatizing, which is happening right now, like if person has a fever for some reasons which is not a COVID thing, it is very difficult for people to find help to actually shift a person to an hospital. And in economies like India, where we do not have an efficient infrastructure, like you cannot expect a ambulance coming in 5 minutes of making a call in India and in most parts of India. So you still depend on your neighbors coming in and helping you to this thing. And so that stigma, this thing, and for me, self-dependency is kind of a negative in this aspect. I would look at more of an interdependency. We need to respect each other more. We need to understand things more equally, and we actually depend on each other for each and every need. So for me, I think it's a new era for all of us, we need to look at designing more systems in less transactional thing. If we actually measured globalization in terms of the transactions we do with between countries, I think that definition needs to change. We need to look at how much people stand by each other. We had a very good example of that also when there was demand for a particular medicine, which India is the largest producer of. We saw that our country actually sent it to a lot of nations. I think that's a very good gesture, and that's what we need at this time of crisis. As we will see that peaks in certain countries go away, we can actually have resource sharing with other countries. If certain country is in an advantageous position in terms of certain resource, they need to share it with the world, and that's exactly a time when we do this. Even for within India, we are seeing some kind of interstate conflicts happening where we know where there are migrant workers happening. There is some crisis happening where states are calling back nurses from their region to come back to their states. So these kind of interstate conflicts are also starting to happen, and that's exactly like how India is such a large country. It's most like it's in a small world in its own. So these kind of conflicts will happen if we look at this aspect of self-dependency in that context. But if we look at more interdependency, more embrace more reciprocity, it's going to help make a better world for all of us.
That's true. And now I'll just move to employment actually. And I would like to know, with unemployment levels, I think rising to almost more than 30% in most of the countries, I would know that how a policy which is environmentally sound is the word, can actually lead to can actually create employment. Well, how do you think a better environment can create more employment? Are there any jobs that we should be looking at that, okay, maybe you need to train as a solar panel installation guy? I don't know, like, what do you think is some examples of employment fields that you could mention here?
Yes. So I'm not an expert in this thing, but definitely my perspective is that we have to look at creating livelihood for people, because that's essential. There's no debate about that. But there are certain aspects where this thing, if you look at the Indian economy, and a large population of Indian like kind of people depend on farming activities. It is still one of the largest employers, right? And that's where opportunity is. A lot of India is actually rural India, right? And we had a very, very good program running since years now, is the Manrega program, where you still have an opportunity to employ people and give them money in their hands to actually increase consumption as well, where you can use them to build infrastructure. We still have opportunity to build roads in rural India, dig wells, dig ponds, or things which can actually help create a infrastructure for people. Thing. So yes, so prioritizing this thing, and then as you talked about creating more jobs in the clean energy. Now, if we can be more ambitious about pushing more money in creating more jobs in the green economy, that could be a great opportunity for India to look at.
Trainings, maybe some sort of trainings in that section.
Yes. So definitely that's an opportunity for to create. Also, health is a great sector where a lot of jobs can be created. We know how kind of like worse prepared we are in terms of dealing with our healthcare. Like we have all like governments need to start spending more on health. So there is a great opportunity to create a lot of jobs in this thing. So these, I think, is the point that we are trying to kind of understand, is that where do we prioritize? What should we prioritize? If we should we prioritize the same old thing and try to revive it, or we look at an angle which kind of benefits in a long term? So my vote is for that aspect of it, where we smartly allocate resources to more long-term initiatives, of course, that to me is a kind of solution. And we briefly talked about one of the very innovative things which has come from Pakistan, like paying laborers to plant trees. I think that's a great thing. I personally, when I got to know this in the evening also, and I was thinking how can as environmentalists we can take this up, maybe create a philanthropic fund which kind of people can donate to, and we can actually create jobs for people to plant trees if we can work this out with the governments, and there can be donations from people coming in, and this can actually create some employment for people. I think that would be one of the amazing projects to take this up. So this is something which I am going to consider at my level, is if this is something which is feasible for us to do.
So from an employment perspective, we can say that there are a lot of low-hanging fruits in the economy. It's like when we open our eyes and actually see them. They're all around us, but we just have to be pushing towards it, have better policies to really work on them, and save our population from actually starving, which we are seeing, unfortunately, with the migrant workers right now. And
also a very, very interesting thing, sorry to disturb. I think one thing which I look, it's a very, it's a kind of a little philosophical, but what I see is that all the while we have seen that what we have been doing in cities has been causing a lot of ripple effect for the rural population, and they have been suffering. Right now, what I think is that it's time for the rural people to rise and shine, and it's a punishment by nature for the people living in cities. And I personally feel they are bound to suffer this thing. They deserve this kind of suffering. They deserve the forced balance, the thing which has been forced upon them. And I particularly see a great opportunity for India to have a boost in rural economy, because that's where the number of infections are also low, because still based on data also we see the cities are most affected. And so if we can push in more money into the rural economy, create more jobs there, migrant workers are going back. We need livelihoods for them. There are people there. If we can create more jobs in the rural economy, and I will be very happy if the migrants can stay closer to their homes. They don't have to move across, because what we have done to the laborers in cities is actually very, very immoral, be it the private industries who employed them or for the governments what they have done. We have seen them as not as humans, to my personal this thing. We have seen them as tools for economies, and that's really disgusting for me as a human being, as what we see. And if for that matter, if someone suffers as an industry, as a labor crisis, I think they're bound to suffer. They deserve this kind of suffering for what they have done. And that will be a very good thing happening for the capitalistic world. I'm not against it, but I think that is going to be a very good thing happening for these things, and very good thing happening for the long term for the environment and the economy.
So with the ray of hope, the sustainability, opening the economy from a sustainable point of view is possible. And yes, according to Ajay, we can see a boost in the rural economy. And on that positive note, I would like to end this discussion. It was a lovely conversation, Ajay. I think I asked you too many questions today. Anything that I could think of, and even satisfy my own curiosity apart from our viewers. So lovely speaking with you. We'll go into a song that has been created by ICANN. It is an uplifting song. And see you all tomorrow for our next discussion. Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
मुश्किल है अनपढ़ी ये कैसी कठिन घड़ी, सहमी सहमी जिंदगी, बिखरी हुई बंदगी, मानवता है पुकार रही, दिखाएं हम दरिया दिली. I can, you can, we can. I can. हम सब मिल जाए तो, मिलकर हाथ बटाए तो टल जाएगी ये घड़ी, झूमेगी फिर से खुशी. आशा टूटे नहीं, हौसला रूठे नहीं, साथ ये छूटे नहीं, मंजिल दूर नहीं. मानवता है पुकार रही, दिखाए हम दरिया दिली. I can.